Hey guys, the Uncultured Swine here. Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking about Space Jam: A New Legacy. This review will be a bit different from the others because today I'm actually joined here with a friend, the Cheesecake Huddle.
Hi.
Since it just came out this past weekend and we have mostly similar thoughts on it, we decided that we would talk about it together. I guess we can talk about the two previous theatrical release Looney Tunes movies, those being the original Space Jam and also Back in Action, I guess. As for the original Space Jam, I can see why some people can enjoy it, but I was just never a huge fan of it. It has a really bland story that doesn't really know what it wants to be, the acting isn't very good, and the effects look terrible. I'll at least say it has somewhat of a short runtime, and it doesn't really waste too much time, unlike the sequel, but it's not really like I would really watch this one again, at least anytime soon. As for Looney Tunes Back in Action, it's just a really awful movie. You could literally cut the Looney Tunes out of the story, and pretty much 80% of it would still be the same. The only thing the Looney Tunes really bring is at least some entertainment with the story, because otherwise the story is just really bland and forgettable.
For Space Jam, I understand how people like it, but I only understand that if they're nostalgic to it. Unironically, it's really bad, but definitely not awful. The basketball scenes are pretty fun to watch, and it's not that bad an adaptation of the Looney Tunes characters, but yeah, it's really boring. Most of the acting is terrible, so Space Jam 3.5 out of 10, and Back in Action is just so awful. After the first 10 minutes, it's the most generic, boring road trip movie that never gets my attention. It's genuinely really boring, and it drags on for a lot, which sucks considering it's pretty short runtime. My expectations coming into A New Legacy, I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I came in expecting a pretty fun movie, but nothing good, and that's pretty much what I got.
Yeah, it was kind of mixed going into A New Legacy because it looked fine, but I just didn't really think it would be all that good. And for me, I thought it was personally really bad. It's not really an entirely worthless experience because unlike Back in Action, I was actually entertained for a majority of the film. While this movie is really entertaining, I will say that it really lacks in terms of writing. Right off the bat, one of the movie's biggest problems is the insane 2-hour long runtime. This movie has no reason to be as long as it is, and it drags on a lot.
For me personally, I thought it was just bad, slightly better than the first, but far from good. I'll say that the references didn't feel forced like they were in films like Ralph Breaks the Internet. And the 2D animation is absolutely gorgeous. Not to mention the film does a better job of adapting the Looney Tunes character than its predecessor and Back in Action.
I'll at least give it that the Warner Brothers references scenes didn't really take up too much of the movie's runtime, but it just really felt unnecessary and could have easily been cut out. The montage scene felt more like a commercial than anything. This movie tries way too hard to be different from the original, and it just makes the movie feel really overwhelming. This movie also has a lot of how do you do fellow kids moments, and it just makes the movie feel more dated than anything.
The script is just terrible. The pacing was really inconsistent and led to the film being boring a lot of the time. They spent so much time with LeBron and Bugs in Toon World, way too much time. And yeah, the acting from LeBron James was better than Michael Jordan's performance, but I still didn't find it to be all that good.
It's clear that acting is definitely not LeBron's biggest strength because in this movie he just delivers such a soul and dull performance. It's hard to really take him seriously in any emotional scene, not just because of how bad his acting is, but mainly because the actual emotional scenes themselves are just really bad. It's not just his acting that's bad, but it's just the actual writing itself that is just not subtle at all. Basically, LeBron realizes that he's not letting his son and also the Looney Tunes just be themselves, so then he decides in the third act that them being loony will help them win the game. It's a generic, dumb message that we have seen so many times before. Probably the most surprising thing about this movie is Don Cheadle's performance as the villain. Sure, on paper, his villain is just really weak and boring, but Don Cheadle just clearly has the time of his life while playing him, and he gives a really fun and energetic performance. In my opinion, he kind of carried most to this movie?
The plot itself is better than the first, I guess, but it's still bad. And what I also have to say is that the basketball scenes were more entertaining here than they were in the original Space Jam, of course, but I found the ones in the first movie to be better because, I don't know, the Goon Squad literally had no character whatsoever. I just didn't care for them at all. At least the monsters had some character and a little bit of development, but I really didn't care for the Goon Squad. They were really underused. And I forgot to mention that the Don Cheadle villain, who I already forgot the name of, I didn't really find to be that good. Don Cheadle gives a great performance, but the villain is just so been there, done that, and boring.
I do agree that the movie does get more entertaining once we actually get to the third act, even though it takes a really long time to get there. I mean, the movie's still not good. It still has a lot of really awful emotional scenes, and I'm not the biggest fan of the CG Looney Tunes designs. I mean, the designs themselves look fine, but I just feel like they only made them CG just so they could be more modern and not because they were actually needed. The 2D designs actually looks pretty good in live action. They could have easily just stuck with them. But yeah, overall, Space Jam: A New Legacy is not a very good film. It's not awful though. It's definitely better than the first movie, slightly, and it's definitely a huge improvement over Back in Action, but it's just still not a very good movie. The movie is really unfunny and honestly kind of overwhelming at times, and it drags on a lot. I'd honestly sooner watch the first one, even though this one is better than that one. That's probably just due to the fact that this one was just really long, and at least that one doesn't really feel like you're wasting your time. Space Jam: A New Legacy gets a 3.5 out of 10.
But yeah, the film is better than the first, but that's not really saying much. I'll give it a 4 out of 10.
Thank you so much to Cheesecake Huddle for doing this video with me, and his channel link will be in the description below. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys all next time.
2 to the 1, from 1 to the 3. I like good pussy and I like good trees. Smoke so much weed you wouldn't believe, and I get more ass than a toilet seat. 3 to the 1, from the 1 to the 3. I met a bad bitch last night in the D. Let me tell you how I made her leave with me. Conversation and hands.